All right, Wendy, I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Ashley. And I thank Ann Yaslonas for all of your efforts for providing these webinars to our group. You do such a wonderful job every other month and bringing amazing titles and speakers in. So it's really super helpful. And I think it's a great way to keep our group together. So it's just excellent. And I've been asked to give a recap of the 2024 Extension Master Gardener Coordinator Conference that we did out in Santa Fe. Go ahead, Ashley, with the next slide. And we had about 96 people attend, and it was just a great conference. We were out in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I have to have a huge thank you going out to the coordinators, Linda Garvin, Chris Hebert, and Ava Pavone. They pulled together wonderful speakers, great lengths of talks. Some of the talks were an hour and a half, some were 30 minutes, some were 20 minutes. So we had a different time periods of learning that we did. We had a perfect blend of learning, networking, and being able to experience a beautiful location in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The weather was fantastic. We all just wore light jackets and jeans, which was a nice change for us in August from coming from Florida. Go ahead with the next slide. I'm glad you like that picture, Matt. Thank you for taking it for us. So we had 96 people come. We representing 28 states, from Washington State to Florida, from Southern California to Maine, so crisscrossing the whole nation. They pulled together 3 excellent tours, one of Santa Fe Botanical Gardens, one of an Audubon Center, and then one of an authentic Tequesta Pueblo farm, which was really a great experience for the Native American exposure that we got out there. There was 27 different presentations on topics that are so relevant to what we're doing. And I think people come back with amazing ideas that they can put into place right away. And I get so inspired by this conference. So some of the topics that we saw were writing great impact reports, civil rights, equal rights requirements, community gardens and volunteers, empowering volunteer presenters, and then there were 3 sessions on pollinator programming. But we got to find out what people are doing across the state and get little glints and glimmers of wonderful ideas that we can implement immediately back into our program. And I had a list of bullet points of about 6 things that I knew I was going to put into place as soon as I got back to Florida that I was going to be able to implement into my program right away. Okay, next slide. And I want to let you know that the professional development that we do there is excellent as well, not only getting the new skills and knowledge and exposure to what other programs are about, but there are also awards that are available as well. And one for creative excellence, one for creative excellence. There's a DEI award, there's a Distinguished Early Career Award, and then there's a Distinguished Coordinator Award. So these look great on your promotion packets, but it's also a way to find out about what these people are doing and get inspired by them. And then I am always blown away how new and young agents come into this conference and bring their enthusiasm and innovation. So you get inspired from the newest people as well as the people who are seasoned veterans. And there's just next level networking. We all need to network and kind of hear from our peers, and we do that at the state level. But if you can do that on the national level and get plugged into the national organization, you can get a whole lot from it. So I would really, we don't know where the next one will be. We know it's going to be at a fantastic location, but if you have an opportunity, don't miss this chance to elevate your expertise and share your expertise and make really impactful connections going forward. So come on to the next one. You will not be disappointed. It's going to be great. So that's my recap. I would encourage you to definitely think about attending the next one. And Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you, Wendy. We really appreciate that update, and it's always great to hear about the awesome, stories and all the inspiration that happens. And I love when you said, you came back with all the bullet points of things you want to implement right away. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we are going to go ahead and transition now to Colby Silvert. And I'm going to let Colby share his screen now. And do you mind giving an introduction to your background too, whenever you get your slides up?
Yes. Are you seeing the slide now? Great. Okay. Well, I'm really glad to be back here with you all. I was here almost a year ago, last December, talking about evaluation, more on the data collection side and how to design your evaluation plan. And now we're switching gears a little bit. I do want to just say a little note to anyone who is in the South or near the storm that I'm thinking of you, and I appreciate people who were able to hop on today. And my hope and thoughts are with this storm being downgraded and everyone pulling through well. So with that, the title of this webinar presentation and discussion afterwards is Translating Evaluation into Practical Behavior Change Strategies. It's one of my favorite topics. I always use this ripple and water droplet because I think of behavior change as how do you target the right person or the right program in the right place to then have ripples, to impact others, to expand your impacts for neighbors, to tell their neighbors, and to really be effective and do this intentionally. So I'm going to go briefly through this, and if you were here last year, you know a little bit about me, but I focus on plan change and evaluation. And when I say plan change, that's how do you design your programs using behavior change approaches, other plan change approaches to impact people more effectively and impact the right people. And how do you align that with your evaluation? How are you measuring that and ensuring that you're having the intended impacts and making corrections where needed? So I focus on that. I have an extension appointment. My first degree is in horticulture, which fits well with the Master Gardener program, but my PhD and master's degree are in extension education. I also am the co-director of our Master of Extension Education program at the University of Maryland. So I like to start with learning outcomes so you all can think about what you should walk away with today and at least have circulating in your head to be able to start doing more of or doing better in sharing with others. And these learning outcomes are to collect and analyze data through a lens of translating those findings from the data you're collecting for your evaluations into opportunities to change behaviors. That's the first one. The second is to identify some basic approaches from our planned and behavior change theories to apply in your programs. And I've tried to keep the theory limited and focus more on the practical side of things, but there are some really, really cool theories out there that can help you in your work. And then the last one is to look at determining some effective evaluation practices used by your peers in the Master Gardener program and extension. And we last December collected some chat information, asked some questions around evaluation, around how you nominate and empower champions through your work, how you address diversity. So we have some of those responses at the end of the presentation to share with you. So as we go through this, I want you to think of 3 areas. As we move from collecting data through our surveys, through our focus groups, through our programs, that data that we need to collect or that we decide to collect, how can you use that data and collect that data in a way that can identify who are the champions in your programs, who are the experts, the leaders, versus who are maybe more beginners that need a little more support or should be approached in different ways. The second thing is, how do you target barriers? Where are you seeing barriers for your program participants to actually make changes, to adopt practices like pollinator conservation gardening, or to improve their landscape practices? Whatever those improved practices are, how do we figure out what the barriers are to people actually adopting the improved practice that we're promoting? And then the last point is to look at strategic messaging. We have all these platforms, social media, different ways to visualize, different ways to do this. And I know you've looked at this a little bit before, but how can we also take our evaluation data and use it towards that? So social marketing may be familiar to some of you, and I just want to briefly start with social marketing is kind of the broad field that captures some of these plan change and behavior change approaches. And what that is taking your program, the target behaviors you are promoting, and looking at that through a marketing lens. So it's called social marketing because you're not just trying to get money from it like commercial marketing, you're trying to get people to adopt something that will help them, that they will enjoy, that will be better for them. So social marketing has these 4 P's that can guide you in your work: product, price, promotion, and place. So as you are going into a program, you can start thinking about what is the product that you're promoting. So that product could be an irrigation system. You want people to use smart irrigation to save water. So you're thinking about, is this an appropriate product to promote? Is it affordable? Is this the right product? The price is really critical. That's what are the costs versus the benefits for people that may adopt that product. And you want to think of this a little broadly, not just money. Money matters, but also time. You may think of who your audience is. Do they have the time to engage in this new practice? Will this save them time? Social status. People really like what their neighbors think. And sometimes people are worried about a certain landscape practice because their neighbors will not appreciate it. So that could be a price that you're considering there. Promotion is based on the product and price. How are you promoting this? How are you setting up the programs? Are you doing this online? Are you doing this in person? How are you doing this effectively? And the last part is everything we do needs to be grounded in the place, and different places require different conditions. If I'm looking out, or if I'm targeting urban Baltimore residents, it's going to be a lot different than rural residents that have large plots of land, or looking at economic status or issues around DEI. The place is important there. So all that being said, what we're trying to do is to target your audience in strategic ways, make sure the behavior you're promoting is appropriate, and reduce those barriers, increase benefits, and assess the audience and where they're located. So one tool or one model that you can use for social marketing is called the trans-theoretical model. And what that does is it helps us to look at where people are in the process of adopting a new practice. And that can be really important because people are in different places. And if you treat all of your program participants the same, you're less likely to have an impact. So the trans-theoretical model has these different stages, and I'm going to go through each of these. And it goes from pre-contemplation about a change to contemplation to preparing for that change to actually acting on that change and then maintaining it. So we're going to talk about this a little more. This theory actually came from looking at health and addiction issues and how people may contemplate changing their addiction. And now we've used it a lot in social marketing, in conservation and landscape practices, things like this. The thing to keep in mind is it's not always as clear cut and clean as it looks here. Sometimes people start a practice, and you probably see this with your clients, that they were really engaged in a new improved practice. Maybe they adopted a pollinator garden, and then a year later, they're not doing it as much, and you're trying to get them to get back on that. So sometimes things can go back and forth with this process. So starting with that pre-contemplation stage, that's where someone's just walking along and they have no awareness of an issue or a way to change their behaviors. So that means it's going to be pretty hard to figure out how to encourage them. So the key to that is really that basic initial awareness. If you find that your clients, your participants are at this stage, you need to get them some information. You need to get them to be seeing things to at least start thinking about it. And that's what moves them to contemplation, where they're not actually doing something different, but they're thinking about doing something different. They're thinking possibly, oh, maybe I could change my behaviors. And this is where behavior change based on the research starts to look more likely in the next 6 months. So you're moving into an opportunity zone for your clients. And what can you do as the change agent, as that's what I'm calling you all, are change agents, is you can build on their initial understanding, start to present more information, but also start to link them to groups and resources, online groups, groups like the Master Gardener program, and help them to have some more encouragement. And look at what are some of those influences and triggers. Maybe you find that someone in an HOA, in a homeowners association, needs to be able to understand the policies of their homeowner association, whether it allows certain practices. So maybe that's an important influence for you to target. So then we move into preparation, and preparation is where your individuals are now aware of the issue and they're actually planning for action in the near future. So your behavior change becomes more likely in the next month. Maybe they're buying materials, maybe they're attending trainings. So at this stage, as a change agent, you want to look, are there any more barriers or benefits that you should be looking at? Maybe you should look at a cost-effective approach for them. You should see if they have any final questions. And then the other part that you can do here is look at trials. People really like what they can see and feel and do. And if you can get people to try these practices, that can be really helpful at this stage. So the second to last stage is action, where they've actually adopted it, but you don't know that it's sustainable yet. So usually this has been less than a month. It's not permanent yet, so they're still forming opinions. And this is a critical stage for the change agent to make sure they don't go backwards, that they're like, oh my gosh, this was way more work than I expected. I got to go backwards. So this is where you're providing encouragement. You're looking to peers to support them and hope that your clients move forward with this. And if they do, they move on to maintenance and advocacy. They have been engaged in the behavior for at least 6 months. There's a reduced chance that they're going to go backwards. And they may even start telling their neighbors, which is one of our goals. They start to bring more people on board, and they're kind of doing your job for you, which can be really nice. So again, we're reinforcing change, and we're encouraging them to advocate, to be our volunteers, and and I know that's really important for the Master Gardener program, to target these people that have reached this stage. So I like to include application examples and make sure that we're not too deep in the theory here. How could you do this with your evaluation approaches? So in Florida, I worked with Dr. Laura Warner down there, and we used this trans-theoretical model, what I just walked you through, and we had a focus group with Master Gardeners. And there's a picture of one of our participants contributing. And we put up a sticky wall, and on that sticky wall, we had all of those stages, the pre-contemplation up to maintenance of a behavior change. And we asked those Master Gardeners, how did you adopt smart irrigation or water conservation practices through your irrigation? Because we knew these people had, that's why we recruited them. And what we had them do is at each of these stages, describe what they went through, how they went through that process. And we asked them, what were you doing at the stage? What were you thinking about? And what I think is really cool, what were you feeling as you went through these stages? Because what we find is that through behavior change, feelings are really important. And so we have to look at if people are feeling good about a change, if they feel supported, that's when they're more likely to adopt. And we had people actually draw faces to describe their feelings in this exercise. So you could hold a focus group like this with a group. We had, I think, 5 people, and you can map this out. And what this did that was really important was it showed us for this group, this sample, how they overcame barriers to adopt the water conservation practices in their landscape. And what we found was that them joining with peers, social support, was critical to help them adopt it. And I have a QR code with an extension publication that also has a worksheet for you to practice this approach, to look at how you could use this journey mapping and use the trans-theoretical model or other stages to map this out. And this is a lot, but I did want to show you, okay, what did that whole map look like? So this was all on a wall. This was all using stickies, but we then translated it. We put it into a figure like this afterwards, after the focus group. But we asked all these things and filled this out. And what was interesting was we looked at the different stages, but at the contemplation and preparation stages, what we found was that people started to get worried about what to do, how to conserve water, but it was their peers and joining with groups and social support that was critical to get them to actually adopt this. So what you leave this focus group with is this idea that as you form your programs, you really need to encourage people to reach out to their neighbors, to try to get people on board, to get that social support in place. So that's where this can be really valuable. So switching to another theory approach that we can use, you may be familiar with diffusion of innovations. And this is another good way to understand your audience and look at the different places where people are in adopting a new behavior or a new practice. And I'm going to talk about how this can connect to your evaluation. So what we see, I'm not going to go through the whole theory because it's a lot, but we see this innovation curve of the far left is the first to adopt your new practice, and the far right are the last or they never adopt. So, and we have these percentages of what's estimated that the population falls under these practices. And what's important to think about is innovators, that 2.5%, they tend to be the more radical people. They tend to be the ones that they adopt before people even knew there was a new practice. Maybe they've got a new irrigation practice, or they're planting new varieties in their gardens that people didn't even know existed. But they tend to be less influential because they're a little more radical. They do things, they either have the money or the resources to do things that others, the common population, may not be able to. But then we move into early adopters and early majority, and this is who you do really want to look at through your programs, because those are the leaders in the community. They are the ones that once they know about the practice, their peers are looking to them like, hey, I want to do what you're doing. So it's really good to start looking at the early adopters and early majority, because they're the ones who start doing your job for you and start sharing with others. The late majority and laggards can be more difficult to convince. They may be distrustful of you as an extension professional who's going to their community. The laggards may be the ones who never wanted to adopt a smartphone, or they're like, I'm not using email. I don't want to do that. So it can be a lot more challenging, and you have to think about, does it make sense to invest a lot of resources there, or do you want to target those early adopters and early majority? So how can you do this? Here's our application example number 2. And what you can do is design a survey to separate who falls under which category here in those innovators all the way to the laggards. And this was a survey we did in Florida on pollinator gardening engagement. We were looking at the different practices people could have to promote pollinators in their garden. And we had a set of items, and on a mean from 1 to 5, we're seeing how frequently or if they are adopting these practices. So what you can do is use those percentages and see, okay, who's in the top 16%. Those would be those first 2 categories, the innovators and the early adopters, or who's in the bottom, which may be the laggards. So you can take this set of items and look at, for each respondent in their means, where they fall under those categories. And what that does for you is helps you to understand who your audience is. If you find that your audience is more on the laggard side or the late adopters, you're going to have to approach them a lot differently. You're going to need to find peer leaders to work with them. If you find that you're only reaching innovators, then you may have a problem because those innovators are less influential. So thinking of those percentages and the diffusion of innovations model can be useful, and you can take these sets of items and analyze them in that way. So I know that's, hopefully you can look back on this and think about this, but there is a work or a article, another extension article that can help you with this with the QR code. So the last technique I want to finish on, which we touched on last year in December, is how to use strategic messages. How do you frame your evaluation findings and target them towards your audience to change behaviors? And what we find is that the data you collect, those percentages of how many people participated, whether you reached an underrepresented group and what that looked like, and how many people actually adopted, that can be almost directly translated towards some really great visuals to change behaviors. And what we find in using these visuals is that you should frame them carefully. And framing means, how do you adjust your message? And by message, I mean like a social media post or something that you would see online, or even on a poster you may see printed. How do you frame that for your audience? And what we find is that what works for that is to frame based on an individual, like a person, so people see an image of this person doing something and they can imagine themselves also doing that, or to take impressive, bigger statistics. Maybe you get statistics across your county or across the state, and that's what you're using for some of these visuals. But we find those are most effective. And I'm going to show some examples here in a second. More visuals and less text can be really useful. And the last part is to make sure that your brand is visible and that you include a link, because the visual is important, the message is important, but a link is where you see that they actually follow up to sign up for your newsletter or to look at more about your program. And you can actually capture that, and I'm going to explain that now. So social media split testing is this approach where this image on the right kind of represents it, where you take different messages. Maybe you did a big, well, maybe even not a big evaluation. You do a survey and you have some different findings on knowledge, on engagement, on your demographics, and you start to put those into messages. You say that the Master Gardener program in this area achieved this, and you have a nice image with it, and you test those with different audiences. And you can do that using social media. You can go to sign up for a Facebook advertising campaign, and you can choose where do you want to target, who do you want to target, and Facebook has some of these characteristics. And then instead of just using one message and hoping that it works, you could test these 3 variations. Maybe they each have a different image, and see which one has the best results. And Facebook is going to give you back through the split testing method, the likes, the people that saw the message, or the people that actually clicked on your link to learn about the Master Gardener program. So that can be really useful to help you understand which messages to use and really have some data that that social media platform is helping you with. So always look at each audience differently and how you target them, and the social media platform can help you with that. And where you have communication experts on a campus or somewhere like that, try to use their expertise too. And that's what we did here. And there's an article in the Journal of Extension that describes this process on using evaluation findings to create these visuals and to change behaviors in this way. So what I was talking about was either to have a person so people see themselves, or to have a broader statistic. And you can see on the left here, we have our broader statistics. And this was across Florida, how many gallons of water or how much money was saved through water conservation practices. And then on the right, we have smaller statistics, but still impressive, but we have where people see themselves as this person doing this. And so, for example, thanks to what I learned from a UFI Phys Extension workshop, my family has changed how we water our lawn, and these changes have resulted in 400,000 gallons of water that are saved. So people see that and they step into the shoes of this person. So hopefully you can think about how you frame and how you create these visuals, and how they really create something appealing to share your evaluation online and through these platforms. So I know that was quite a bit. I wanted to kind of give you some new tools, give you some ideas, hopefully inspire you, and then wrap up with some learning from what we learned from you all last year when we asked about evaluation and what you're doing. And I pulled some of the data that people provided, but we found that people were using different tools to evaluate their programs, like Top Hat to collect data. So you may look into Top Hat. They found that sometimes in-person and online programming is useful to reach more audiences and to reach younger audiences. Qualtrics was one that I saw across the data. We saw that in this question about diversity and who you're reaching, that people think measuring hours in a program is really important, but they're worried that if you're only measuring hours that volunteers put in, that you may be missing out on maybe some families or people that have children, and maybe we need to think about some other ways to measure this. We saw a lot of you all giving feedback on sharing with local government entities. So your peers, everyone thinks it's really important to engage your politicians and your local governments. Some people are doing that through a breakfast or through different events or meetings, but that doing that with your evaluation findings can be really important. Showing the value to people of these data and these findings. And then let's see, and Salesforce was another one. So some of this is new to me, actually, but I wanted to give this back to you, and maybe you have some reactions of how you could use some of these similarly. So through all of that, hopefully you're leaving with just some ideas of how you segment your audience. You look at who those champions or innovators are, who are more at the beginning level or the laggard level. How do you target some of those adoption barriers, and how do you map that out? We looked at that journey mapping. And then a little bit on strategic messaging. How do you use things like framing and creating these messages, and then using a campaign on social media to measure their impact? So just a couple quick plugs. Starting next month, there will be an online professional development course to create an evaluation plan that's self-paced, that I'm co-instructing with Dr. Dacia Randolph out of the University of Maryland. If you are interested, you leave this course with an evaluation plan to use, and we provide guidance along the way. Look out for that if that's something of interest to kind of bring you to that next level in evaluation. It includes some on plan change as well. And then the very last thing, I have to give a little plug. We have 2 open houses, October 15th and November 12th, for our Master of Extension Education program. That's a flexible program, looks at technical areas that could be horticulture or entomology. You can do a lot of this online, but also those principles in behavior change and program planning, evaluation, and to get that advanced degree. So you may be interested in sharing this open house for people you know as well. So with that, there is a post survey here, and I'm happy to answer any questions people may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Colby. We have one question in the chat. I don't know if you can answer that one. Can you get usage visitor data from websites?
So you can from websites. It's Facebook, their advertising campaigns make it really easy to pull all that data, and it really shows you, okay, who did it reach versus who engaged or who clicked on a link. But you can also through websites. But I know it's a little different depending on the website platform, so you'd have to check on that. Okay. Thank you for the question.
Great. Yeah, if anybody else has questions, you can unmute or enter them in the chat. We'll give people a few minutes. Colby, thank you so much. That's always so inspiring to think about where we want to go and what we should be doing in this time of year when we're starting to wrap up and look at numbers and impacts and planning for the next future programs. It's always helpful to have this great information in front of us. So with that, lots of thanks is in the chat. Thank you guys for joining us. Our next webinar, goodness, is December the 11th, and it's on therapeutic horticulture. We will be sharing the recording of this presentation. If you know of anybody who missed it, it'll be up on our archived YouTube channel as well. And if you guys have any questions or anything else, we appreciate you reaching out to either Ann or I, and we thank you for joining us today.
And if you can take the QR code or the link in the chat and just give some feedback of hopefully you're thinking about things differently or you have suggestions on how I could improve, in the future, that would be greatly appreciated. I really appreciate it.
All right, we'll give people a few minutes to grab that link to fill out that evaluation. Again, Colby, we appreciate your time today and your expertise. And I think lots of people are looking forward to taking this information and really, implementing it in what we do from day to day. So,
Great. Thank you, Ashley. Always good to
all
be
right. Thank you so much. You guys take care. And let's see, we do have a couple questions coming in. So I'm going to let you read that one.
here.